Brainstorm, bringing great minds and ideas together, exploring a wide variety of opportunities, achieving academic excellence, using the latest technology, government's impact, preparing for 21st century careers, parenting and health issues, topics shaping tomorrow. Brainstorm with Lisa Willever, bringing great minds and ideas together.
Hi, welcome to Brainstorm. I'm Lisa Willever, and today we're talking about differences. Before we begin, let's learn a little bit more about our topic. One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The Pledge of Allegiance is said every day, and even though we pledge liberty and justice for all, we still have a lot of work to do. We often hear the word tolerance used when differences interact, but maybe we should use more positive terms like equality, or accept, or embrace, or even celebrate. The way we learn to view differences shapes the way we view others. To really achieve the promise of America, we should embrace the fact that we are all different, and no one is better. Joining me today, I have Pastor Karen Hernandez-Granson and Danielle Miller-Winrow. And I would like you ladies, tell me a little bit about your background so the viewers know why I invited you, because you are my experts today.
Well, since I was conceived in my mother's womb, I have been multiracial, multicultural. I'm a New Yorican. That's a Puerto Rican born in New York.
Okay.
As a Puerto Rican, that makes me a native Taino Indian, a white Spaniard, and a black African. So the call to be the pastor of an intercultural church, Westminster Presbyterian Church, began then.
Wonderful, wonderful. I love it. And how about you, Danielle?
Excuse me for my voice. I'm the owner of Sprout Youth School of the Arts. My background, my culture is Caribbean. My family's from Barbados. About 1% of my students are Caucasian. The others are African American and Hispanic. I've been doing this for 22 years. I've had all races of children, and even kids that were abused,
okay.
Kids that actually were diagnosed with AIDS. So I've been in the arena with these kids, and I've been an advocate for them for 22 years.
Amen.
I love that. So we're going to talk about something that's not at all uncomfortable or awkward for most people to talk about, and it's differences, specifically bias and prejudice and all the different things that come along with that. But what I'd love to do is I'd love to figure out a way, if we could solve all the world's problems right now, how we could raise children and teach children to not just be tolerant. Sometimes I hear the word tolerant and I feel like you're tolerating something, like, you're tolerating that visitor who came to your house that you really didn't want to come, but it doesn't sound as positive. I mean, to really accept and celebrate differences. How do we do that? Do you believe that we start with children?
Absolutely. Teach them while they're young.
Okay.
So Westminster has an after-school program. It is 28 years old. It's called the Get Set program.
Okay.
And back when the YWCA started the annual Stand Against Racism Day, we've participated. And one year I decided, well, the way we're going to stand against racism is to celebrate our diversity. And so with the help of Princeton University students, we were even more diverse. Mm-hmm. And so they danced, they played games, a game from Korea, the food that was eaten, the arts and craft that they did. So for me, the way to combat prejudice and racism is to value all of the cultures and not make just a Eurocentric culture, the norm or the best way to do it.
Okay, how about you, Danielle? What are your thoughts on that, since you were running a school?
I believe that you should teach diversity very early. So when they're in different environments, it's not something that's not common. And sometimes kids are very apprehensive in areas that they're not, I want to say, used to.
Okay.
So if you bring it in, which we do through Faith Justice Works, which is a nonprofit, and most of their kids are from different backgrounds. My kids are welcoming because that's the environment that they've been in. And maybe not so much at home, but Sprout is diverse. So it's, it's like it's something that they do on a daily basis. I truly believe teaching them in a diverse arena makes them successful, well-balanced. And I think you're reaching the whole child when you have a diverse community.
I love that. Now, when people talk about differences, they sometimes look at it so negatively.
Right.
But the bottom line is we're all different. And we're not only just different, in amongst each other, but even within our groups, we are all different. So, bias, we always think race, religion. Those are probably the two biggest ones. But there's also bias against people for their physical appearance, for their income level, for the neighborhood they live in, or, the car they drive. You never know what the bias will be. So I agree with both of you. Starting with children is the best way. But children spend the majority of their formative years at home with their parents. So we really need to get that message to parents that the example they set is going to really reflect in their children. How do you do that? How do you get parents to see that it benefits their children in the long term if they can become more accepting?
So a couple times a year, our after-school program, Get Set, will have activities where the parents are involved.
Okay.
And by exposing the parents to the different cultures, that the children expose their own parents through dance and music, et cetera. Because we bring them to, let's say it's Christmas time, we have a Christmas party, it's going to be diverse. The end of the school year party, it's going to be diverse. And one thing I wanted to say is that you're absolutely right about the differences. So within our Latino Hispanic population, most people forget that. If everyone speaks Spanish, then we're all the same. Well, no, we're very different. You got the Caribbean, you got the Central and South American.
And you have Spain.
Yes.
You have, so they're
That's
all
right.
so different. And
Right.
to say because everybody speaks one language is really a misnomer. How about you? What do you think about, how do we get parents to teach this at home?
Just as Karen said, through music. I do it through the arts. My kids do several performances, and they're not just African American based. So these kids go home singing musicals on Broadway, and their parents are like, Miss Danielle, could you please, what are they singing? And I'm like, you know what? This is time for you to do a little research. Why don't you think about taking them to Broadway to actually see it? And mostly everything well, not everything, but most shows are in New York. And that's a big melting pot. So you're actually in that environment. I think it does start with kids. If you teach, how do I put this? Kids are sponges. So if you put that sponge in a bucket of water, and let's say the parents are the bucket of water, eventually the sponge sucks up the water.
By exposure.
That's exactly right.
And so I have to say this, please, a shout out to Danielle and her school. Because the musical that they chose this last spring, Hairspray, is all about bias. It's all about difference and valuing that. It was excellent.
And we actually, we had to, because we had more children of color than Caucasians, we actually had to, which my daughter she said, Mommy, we shouldn't do this. I said, Chandler, why not put the makeup on them? Why not put the blonde wigs on them? They don't know the difference. So you have these kids, actually we had a videographer, and he's like, well, what role do you play? And he got this really dark-skinned little girl saying, I'm a Caucasian dancer. And then you have the Caucasian little boy saying, I'm a Caucasian dancer. Wait a minute, am I an African American dancer or am I a Caucasian dancer? So it didn't make a difference what they were doing.
Because the labels weren't negative.
Absolutely.
That's right.
They were just labels. When my kids were in school, we used to laugh. My daughter is 11 months older than my son, and girls sometimes are more verbal and more, they notice things more. And she would come home and she would tell me who sat next to her here and who sat 3 seats back. And I say to my son, who did you sit next to? And he'd say, girl with yellow hair. And that was his. When they were young, they never said to me, I sit next to a black girl or a Hispanic boy or an Asian boy. They never saw that, but they would tell me if that kid was good in math or good in football football, or if he was nice, or he helped him do something. They really did, as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, they judged them by how they treated them. So I love the fact that your kids weren't like, you know, I'm a Caucasian. They were like, I'm a Caucasian dancer. You know, I'm in a play. You know, Shakespeare, everybody was male.
Right.
All the actors were male.
Right.
So, no, I think that's brilliant. And I love the fact that the labels aren't negative. I mean, listen, we are all different. Absolutely. You know, I am a white woman. You are a black woman. You're a Hispanic woman. That doesn't make the labels bad. It's when I think kids are raised to see it as bad. So I love the analogy of the bucket too, because it's whatever's in that bucket, those kids will soak up. So what is your advice when you know children are coming from a home that may not be as accepting of other cultures? You know, how do you kind of offset that without upsetting parents, but making sure kids are exposed to what will help them in life?
One thing we do is, like, we really have some strict norms at the Get Set program. And if there is first of all, we say everyone's loved, everyone's appreciated. We absolutely do not allow any kind of negative adjectives.
So you make it positive throughout.
Right, throughout. And if there's an incident, you deal with it in a gentle way.
Absolutely.
Because shaming doesn't bring out the best in anyone. But you deal with it. So David Augsburger, many years, wrote a book that helped radically change. My congregation, when I arrived, was 100% Euro-American.
Okay.
And so we needed to adopt some norms, because with difference brings conflict. That's a given, right?
Absolutely.
There's going to be. And so he came up with the term carefronting instead of confrontation. When you confront, that word, confras, Latin word, is in your face.
Okay.
When you carefront, you're doing that because you love that person and you want to make sure that it's a healthy relationship.
It's coming from a different place.
So that communication flows. So that's what we try to do.
I think that's brilliant, because I definitely think shaming somebody is not going to, it's only going to reinforce what they thought they already knew. And when you can be real and honest and kind of quietly say it to them, I think it probably has more impact. Do you find the same?
Yes, I do. Sprout Life is a wonderful life. We don't shame. We see each other as who we are, not for, you know, our hair color, our eye color. We see each other for who we are. It's a creative environment, and it's very busy, so there's really no time for you to actually be biased. And I do have, you know, a couple kids that come from just like, you know, one of the parents says that her parents are prejudiced, but she didn't want that for her children. So she had to find a place where they could learn how to acclimate to everything. And she found Sprout.
And acknowledging
It's
it.
beautiful.
That's, acknowledging it and saying, I want to change it. That's amazing.
Absolutely.
That's great. Well, you know what? We are going to take a break, and we're going to come back, and we're going to talk more about differences. So we'll be back in another moment with some more Brainstorm.
They told me a bottle couldn't dream. That I would never become a superhero. But I learned how to fly. Just to come back in a new disguise. And be the hero that I've always wanted to be.
Look at you. You're at the top of your game. You're unstoppable. Nothing can throw you off track. Wait, is that your car? Uh-oh. Yeah, I saw that coming. That will throw you off track. You're looking at around 10 grand in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. Let's try this again. Smart move. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
We're back with more Brainstorm, and I'm joined by Pastor Karen and Danielle, and we're having a really intriguing conversation because I love your perspective, both of you. You know, your church community education, and you're an educator. And one of the things, and you know, I almost hesitate to tell the story, but I grew up in an area that was all Italian. There was a lot of prejudice. I mean, this is how it was. And back in the 70s and 80s, and when I was a waitress in high school, I would give people rides home that lived in Trenton because I'd see them waiting on the bus, and I would be leaving the restaurant I worked at, and I would say to my dad, can we give them a ride home? And it was funny, sometimes they'd come actually home with us for a little while, and then we'd bring them home. And my neighbors would say things like, what a nice kid that was. He's one of the good ones. And I used to, cringe, because I would think, no, he's not one of the good ones. He's one that you met. So at an early age, I started realizing from my experiences that it was probably mostly the fact that you don't know somebody. And that's kind of the difference here. I mean, you know, and these were good guys, but they weren't the good ones. They were good guys. And, you know, I bet if you met another 100 people that they knew, you'd say, oh, they're all good. Those are all the good ones. So how do we get people to understand that, you know, it's not okay to say somebody's one of the good ones, to not know somebody and judge? How do we get that message across positively?
You want to go first?
You can.
So, again, we mentioned earlier in the show not to shame people. Because I'm multiracial, I saw at a young age how they happened to be Italian. We were one Puerto Rican family in New York, in South Beach. And I noticed how I was treated differently than the African Americans. And so when, over the years, those comments were made, I would gently say, what you said is that there's a lot more good ones. And it's all about exposure. And so to name it, one time I remember introducing myself and saying what I said earlier about being multiracial, and the person said, oh, you're not black? Like it was I said, yes I am, and I'm proud of it. Yeah. But the reaction, like, you're not black, and it was like, why would you want to be black? I am black, and I'm proud of that part of my heritage. So helping people like flip it so that they can look in the mirror when they make those kinds of comments, but for them to receive the constructive feedback is important.
Do you agree with that, Danielle?
I do. I want to tell you a story, and this is what really this is what I guess kind of when the kids come in that we don't see color. For a very long time, my dad worked for Dwyer's downtown, and the owner was Jim Dwyer, which I called Uncle Jim. And so one day, my grandmother, who is mixed, she told me, she said, he's not your uncle. He can't be your uncle. He's a white man. And my mom said that devastated me. And I can remember that. I was 7. I can remember that. And I was like, for the rest of my life, even with my own 2 children, 25 and 23, I will never allow them to see color, because that was so hurtful. I was like, wait a minute, what is she talking about? Why can't he be my uncle? You know what I mean? Yeah. He really wasn't, but he was an uncle to me. And that really hurt me deeply. And I was like, for the rest of my life and the steps that I take, I will never let anyone feel the way I felt.
It is amazing how one thing can impact your whole perspective moving forward, for the positive or for the negative. And as parents and teachers, we really have to be aware of those experiences. I taught 4th grade in the city of Trenton, in an urban atmosphere. Our school was, I believe, 99% black. And I was in my classroom, I think in 8 years I had 2 white students, not even in the same year.
Right.
A few Hispanic students, but mostly black. And I still would hear the kids on each other about their skin tone.
Oh yes,
they're too dark, they're too light.
So it's
that's what
and the hair. who's got nappier hair
Or
than
good hair.
And it was really, it was part of my goal each year was to get these kids to be on the same team.
Absolutely.
We are like a family. We spend so many hours a week together. We're like a family, and they really would bond together, but it took effort. I think getting to this place where we can all get along, which should be the goal. I mean, no matter who you are, you're not going to make it a monolithic society. I mean, it is going to be a diverse society. You may as well learn to get along with that. Otherwise, it's like trying to stop the ocean. I mean, it's not going to happen. And if your children are going to live in a global society, I mean, we are not at the point where we just stay where we are. These kids are going to be interacting with people from all different cultures. I mean, as an author, one of my editors, I didn't know where she was from. She was from Israel. Mm-hmm. In Israel. I had no idea.
Right.
We email. And then finally I went to send her a check and I said, "You're in Israel?" I mean, you just had this wonderful relationship. So interesting to me. So should we make it more about learning? Because going back to that story where people just didn't know the other person,
right.
kind of like an ignorance. Should our focus really be letting kids learn about all different cultures?
Absolutely.
And
That's
not
the
just scratching
Absolutely.
the surface, but I mean, other religions, other cultures. These are what people fight about. These are what wars are waged over. Politics, religion, race. Why are we avoiding these topics? We should teach kids how to respectfully discuss them and learn, don't you? I mean,
yes, and I think that in some ways the media and social media in general has gotten better and worse. Mm-hmm. Better in that when I was growing up, most of the shows, except for the Bill Cosby show, were all Euro-Americans.
Yes.
Right? Mm-hmm. And that has changed. There are a lot more people of color on the different networks, et cetera. But what has gotten worse is that most often when you see an African-American male, they're criminalized.
Yeah.
And so I think the learning part, Lisa, is holding the media accountable. Because the images that they revealed, what's the old idiom? A picture conveys 1,000 words.
Yes, it does.
So these pictures of negative images is not helpful because it reinforces the bias and the prejudice and the racism.
I agree 100%. Do you agree?
Yes, I do. Because basically, that's my fight with the kids. Let's put your cell phones down and let's talk. Let's not look at what's out there. Because some of it isn't real. And even reality television isn't real.
Right. That's like it's an oxymoron, reality television.
And so kids don't understand that. So what they see is what they see. Mm-hmm. So I think we need to get away from it. When we were younger, we didn't have social media. And I look at the adults that we have become and how much more of experience and how much more knowledgeable we are.
And engaging. It's like, there's a connection here.
Yeah,
we're not looking down here.
The opportunity exists to really celebrate differences.
Absolutely.
If people just kind of open their minds a little bit and jump on board. Absolutely. When my youngest was 5, my sister's a photographer and she was doing a photo project as everybody's Christmas gift. And every single person in the family had to fill out a questionnaire. And then she compiled a book with pictures and everybody's answers. Very sweet. And, it was all different generations in one book, so you got to see the difference. But one of the questions was, what's your greatest regret? And my 5-year-old put the Jim Crow laws. And
your 5-year-old.
Yes.
Oh my, that's great.
But only because we teach the kids. I've often heard people say, you shouldn't talk about the country's sins of the past. It's unpatriotic, and I say no. It is. You're bound to repeat them, and
that's
it's
right.
unpatriotic to not want your country to be the best it can be.
Absolutely.
And I want my kids to know, so that they can be part of change, that they can be part of acceptance. And he would tell the kids in his class, and they would come up to him like, "Who's Jim Crow? Who's the Jim?" They thought it was Jim the Crow. I thought it was like a Muppet. But it is just a matter of sometimes I think being open and explaining to kids. Kids have such heart, and they really are impacted when you tell them. And you're not making stories up. When you tell them the truth, it impacts them. So I think at the youngest ages, we need to do that.
Which one of your books focus Nikki the Fifth on this topic?
You know, I try to run it through a lot of them, but I think the one most would be T-Bone Takes a Stand for Public Schools, because that's the book where I introduce kids to poverty.
Yes.
Another topic that people would say, why would you put that in a children's? Because it's everywhere.
Right.
And it's everybody's concern. Not just the kids in poverty. If you don't live in poverty, you're very fortunate, but you're paying a high cost for poverty. So, you know, I want them to know about it. And it's actually inspired good deeds from readers all over the state who've collected money and books and toys and sent them to Trenton children.
Wonderful.
On you know, just reading the book and decided to do it. So I'm all for talking and being upfront and honest with kids.
Absolutely, me too.
Are you girls ready to play Brainstorm?
Yes.
We are.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, not the most creative name. It's called Brainstorm the Game for Brainstorm the Show. Basically, we're going to brainstorm. We're going to look at 8 ideas. If they are good ideas, we keep them. If they're not great, like brainstorming, you get to ball them up and make a basket.
Perfect.
Y'all ready?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Number 1, bias and discrimination are learned.
It's true.
Yes.
I do believe that. I don't think you're born with it. Number 2, discrimination is a fact of life that cannot be altered.
No. I like that.
I'll give you a little bit of
Can
a
we
backboard
burn them
here.
too?
Yes, my husband's a fire chief. He'll give us permission. It's hard to hate a group when you start meeting individual people. Okay. It's a school's responsibility to teach acceptance. I think,
Kind of, sort of.
but also the parent,
parents
right?
too.
So maybe, what do you think? We'll keep that,
Yeah,
but
we'll
that
keep
should
that.
also be parents, okay?
They're included in it, but it's not solely their responsibility.
no.
If they don't do it, then they have a totally negative impact.
Okay,
Right.
agreed. Nothing can be learned from studying history.
Oh my gosh, everything.
My brother's a history teacher. He would agree with us on that one. Discussion should start with toddlers and be continuously reinforced.
Amen, amen.
2 amens, I like that. Like in Sticks and Stones, words can't hurt you.
That's not true.
Okay,
Oh, let's see if I get 2 points.
there you go. And the last one, bias is a thing of the past.
I shot 2 already.
Yeah, I get 2, you get 2.
Nice,
It
girls.
hit the rim.
Well, you know what? Let's hope that all of our efforts and all the efforts of great people around the country and children will eventually make bias a thing of the past, and that will celebrate differences and not hide from them.
That's right.
Well, I want to thank you both for joining me. You were
Thank
both
you.
great guests. I hope you
Pleasure.
get your voice back soon.
Oh,
Thank you
it's
for toughing it out.
Thank
And we will see you again on the next episode of Brainstorm.
Marie, you have prediabetes.
Prediabetes? I don't have time to eat right or exercise. I'm a busy mom.
Oh, you're a busy mom.
Yeah.
This is great news. Busy moms never get prediabetes.
Wait, what?
Let me just... Yeah, this is all the people at risk for prediabetes, and way over here, busy moms. No?
Everybody has a dream. Mine was to see the ocean. And with a little help,